But this is likely to be a very dodgy start because I've been interrupted by the Tesco shop, I've been interrupted by my cat, my husband is now home taking a shower, so I've been out for a walk. Let's just see how we get on. Hello and welcome back to my channel. You're watching What Helen Reads and I'm Helen, and today we're off to Dublin for another Mafia Romance Monday. I also want to take a moment as well to say thank you very much for joining me. I really hope you stick with me to the end, and if you like this video please remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content from me. So far in the series we've been to Moscow and we've also been to Italy, and today we are flying off to Ireland. Before we get started, as always, I like to talk about the hierarchy, how the Irish Mafia works. And the Irish Mafia is often referred to as the mob, or they very much see themselves as a clan or clansmen. Now, they don't really have a strict hierarchy like a lot of the other Mafia worlds that we've looked at already. And they tend to be more family orientated, so it makes a hell of a difference what your surname is, what clan you belong to, and basically then there are like historical rival clans for your family, so that you know, you've been enemies for years basically, and that's how it's set up. So they tend to be much more family orientated, so whoever is kind of like the head of the Irish Mafia, depending on who their sons are, who their brothers are, who their cousins are, that kind of determines the hierarchy of the clan. So the first book I want to talk about is Crow by A Zavarelli, and this is book 1 in the Boston Underworld series. And Crow is very much part of the Irish Mafia, and at the start of this book he's not the person in charge, but as the book progresses and the series progresses, he does in fact become head of the Irish Mafia in Boston. And in this one we're following Lachlan Crow, hence the name of the book is Crow, and Mac. What actually happens in this one is that Lachlan obviously is part of the Irish Mafia, and his kind of like home base, if you like, that's where he does his kind of work from, is this sort of high-end sort of strip club in Boston. And Mac is got quite an interesting background, but she's had quite a tough upbringing. She's spent a lot of time living on the street, but she's currently living with her best friend Talia. Talia one day disappears and nobody knows where she is, and the police aren't interested in finding her because, like I say, they've kind of like in the past they've been rough living on the streets, and they're sort of orphans and no one really cares what's happened to Talia. But Mac absolutely does care. This is her best friend and she's determined to find out where she is, what happened to her, and if necessary rescue her from whatever trouble she's got herself into. And she strongly suspects that it's something to do with the Irish Mafia and something to do with Crow's club. And so basically she decides that she is going to infiltrate, she is going to get herself a job there, and she's going to find out exactly what's happened to Talia. Of course what happens is she goes for a job there, Crow does hire her and she starts to work there, but things aren't what they seem, and Crow doesn't really 100% trust her, and he starts to figure out that she's there with an ulterior motive. But they're extremely attracted to each other, they're very much in close proximity, they spend a lot of time together, and when Crow finds out why she's there, then their sort of story kind of goes from there. Then the next one I wanted to talk about was Owned by Sinner by Michelle Hurd. This one is set in Chicago and it's book 2 in the Sinner series, and Liam in this one is head of the Irish Mafia in Chicago, and Chiara is our heroine. Now Chiara's dad worked for the Irish Mafia. He was not high in the ranks, but he did a lot of their dirty work for them, and he kind of had a one-night stand with this woman. She became pregnant, but he then proceeded to hide the fact that he'd had a child from the Irish Mafia because he didn't want his child to be considered to be a Mafia princess or brought into the Mafia in some way. So he's very much kept his you know, this lady he had a baby with and his daughter very much off the Irish radar. But he still over the years has had a relationship with Chiara, and it's got to the point now where he's actually got sick, and Chiara's quite worried about him and she wants to help him pay his medical bills, and therefore she kind of like needs a better job than the one she's got, and she ends up getting a job as a receptionist for Liam's legitimate business empire, and she's absolutely ecstatic about the fact that she's got this job, and she wishes to tell her mum, and mum is not at all happy about this because she knows who Liam is, and she's worried that he's going to find out Ciara's identity. And when she tells her dad, he's also not happy, and she doesn't understand why her parents are a bit unhappy that she's got this job. And her dad very much tells her to be careful, tries to encourage her to leave the job, but of course she won't because she believes that she needs the money for her dad. Now, she goes to work at Liam's business, but Liam's actually away on mafia business and he's not there right now. And instead his brother Finn, in fact his stepbrother Finn, is kind of running the place. But Finn is not a nice guy at all. And Liam doesn't actually like him, but because of the family connection, they kind of have to kind of get along. And Finn very, very much is jealous of Liam's position. He wants to get higher in the ranks of the Irish Mafia. If he can, he wants to take Liam out and take over his position. But Liam knows that he's not a great guy, even by mafia standards, and he's very much trying to keep him at arm's length. And Finn is not having any of this, doesn't want to have any of this, so he's very, very, you know, calculating and trying to come up with a plan basically to overthrow Liam. But like I said, he's not a great guy, and he's had a bad reputation with kind of like the secretaries, the receptionists and stuff at this organisation. And of course he takes a shine to Ciara and pretty much tries to blackmail her into doing sexual favours for him. And she doesn't like the situation she's been put in. Obviously Finn is very, very horrible, but she's heard that Liam isn't much better, and so she's quite scared of the family overall. And but shockingly, when Liam comes back from his business trip, he twigs on what's going on straight away. He figures it all out, and he determines that he's going to protect Ciara from Finn, and their relationship kind of goes from there. The other interesting element to this is that Liam does not like to be touched at all. He absolutely hates to be touched, but for some reason he doesn't mind when Ciara touches him, and this makes him very intrigued about her, and one of the reasons why he feels so protective of her, wants to make sure that she's okay, and ultimately their relationship develops from there. So Liam is a great character, a really great hero, and I would highly recommend that book. Then from a really nice hero, as Mafia Heroes goes, we go into one that is basically completely unhinged, completely crazy, and I'm talking about Malachi from Savage Daddy by Bianca Cole. And Savage Daddy is book 2 in the Boston Mafia Dons series, and this series basically focuses around different mafia groups, but all fighting for territory in the Boston area. And this book follows Malachi. Like I said, he's a completely unhinged and crazy hero. In fact, he's a villain from book 1. So in book 1 we absolutely hated Malachi, didn't like him at all, and now he's got his own book. And the heroine in this one is Scarlett. Now, Scarlett comes into Malachi's path because she is desperate for money for her mother, who is sick, and she decides that she's going to sell off the one asset that she believes she has, which is her virginity. So she ends up going to a virgin auction. And Malachi is not into relationships at all. In fact, he's a bit of a sadist when it comes to sexual experiences, and he likes to go along to these virgin auctions because he likes to take a woman's virginity, but also to treat her pretty badly, and over the course of several weeks essentially break her, and that's what he kind of likes to do. So he's had quite a few women that he's bought from this virgin auction, and pretty much most of them have gone home at the end of their experience with him extremely traumatized and troubled, probably needing quite a lot of psychological help and medication, let's be honest, because he lives up to his name as a bit of a savage. But of course there's something very different about Scarlett, which he automatically senses and sees. He develops this connection with her, and so while he starts off being savage and he does do some savage things, she is also kind of into it. She likes it, and she has got quite a dark savage centre herself that Malachi really recognises himself in her, but then becomes very sort of possessive and protective of her, and so he even kind of like, you know, shields her from his own savagery in a way. So I really like this hero because, like I say, he starts out as a villain. We see his sort of character arc, we see how he changes when he meets Scarlett, and he very much softens towards her, and that's what I like to see in, you know, these kind of like crazy sort of savage unhinged heroes, that basically it's the woman that kind of makes him change his personality, and, you know, really come to look after her, love her, and appreciate kind of what he's got. So then the next one I want to talk about, and I've actually got a physical copy of this thanks to Jen from the Book Refuge, and this one is Vicious Hearts from Jagger. So basically I subscribe to Jen's Patreon. I'm at the tier where basically she does these book boxes on a quarterly basis, and you get to pick one of her favourite books from the quarter for her to send to you, along with some other free goodies and gifts. And while she doesn't fully annotate the book, she does put some comments through the book, and puts little tabs in and little comments in. So I received this just last week, and I really wanted to read it. I was very interested, but I was waiting until this arrived in my mailbox. And this is book 2 in the series, in the Dark Heart series, and so I actually read book 1 before this, and then I basically dove straight into this one. So book 1 is Irish Mafia and Greek Mafia. It's kind of an arranged marriage and a union of those two mafias. And this one basically is focused on Killian, who is the head of the Irish Mafia. So in this one we're following Killian. Like I say, he is head of the Irish Mafia. He describes himself very much as a psychopath, but he's a psychopath when it comes to everybody else. Also, his sexual preferences are pretty dark. He's into BDSM. He's obviously a dominant, but he's also a bit of a sadist. But he would do anything for his family and for the people that he loves. And in fact, we learn quite a lot about his character in book 1, and the lengths he'll go to protect his niece, Neve, who is the heroine from book 1. So he is, as far as I'm concerned, he is the perfect type of hero, completely utter psychopath, but he'll do anything for the people that he loves. So right up my alley, and a brilliant example, I think, of an Irish Mafia book, because they are absolutely definitely in here competing families, lots of politics going on, and Killian really needs to kind of watch his back. In fact, the heroine in this one is a young lady called Una. I'm not going to reveal too much, but she has got connections to the O'Connors, and she very much believes that Killian is her enemy, and she deliberately infiltrates the sex club called Club Venom, where Killian has membership, so that she can get him alone in a room and then kill him. And this is pretty much the opening gambit of this story, where they meet up in the sex club. Killian takes a bait, he takes her back to a private room, and as they are doing the deed, she gets out a knife and stabs him. Now, she believes she stabbed him in the heart, and she kind of flees the room and escapes, but she hasn't killed Killian, and you can imagine that Killian is not too happy about this situation, and so he spends the next couple of weeks tracking down this person, figuring out who she is, and when he catches up to her, he is going to take her captive, try and get information out of her as to why she's gone after him. But when he figures out who she is, he realizes that it wouldn't be a bad idea if he actually married her, to join his family with the O'Connors and kind of settle some of the political stuff that's been going on with this mafia situation. So I thoroughly enjoyed this. We have a really feisty heroine in this one who, you know, isn't afraid to stab Killian, literally, in the back, and an extremely psychopathic, very focused, very obsessed hero. But when he realises that he's in love with Una, the lengths that he'll go to protect her are, you know, are exactly what we're looking for in our Mafia heroes. So would highly recommend, really enjoyed that book. Then the next one I'm going to talk about is Marauder by Bella de Corte. And now I will be honest with this one and say I read it a couple of years ago, and I can't 100% remember everything that happened in this one, but I do remember that it was an Irish Mafia set in New York, and it's book 2 in the Gangsters of New York series. And Bella de Corte has weaved a very intricate plot for this particular series, and the first book was Machiavellian, which was really good, an intricate plot, and we saw both the hero and heroine in that one, and they kind of get their own book in book 2, but this one is specifically about Cash Kelly, who is Irish Mafia, and Keely Ryan. And basically it's a tale of revenge. Cash very much believes that Keely Ryan's family did something to his, and he's absolutely trying to seek revenge. Keely is the perfect opportunity for him to get this revenge that he wants, and in typical sort of mafia fashion, the best way to do that is obviously force her into an arranged marriage, and that's basically what's happened. And of course, while he is absolutely expecting that he's going to be able to carry out this plan, he's going to take his revenge, he is going to get his revenge on her family. Of course it doesn't work out like that, because now he's married to her, he's in close proximity to her, he finds out more about her as a person, and maybe or maybe not, he learns more things that he didn't know before and starts to doubt whether he's actually married the right person. If he does anything to her, will that even enact revenge, and what is actually going on? And of course, like all good mafia books, there's a lot of mafia drama, mafia politics. There's a war on the street that's going on, and when you throw all that together, you basically have yourself an Irish Mafia romance. So like I say, I can't 100% remember everything that happens. I just remember that when I read it, I did enjoy it. I thought Bella de Corte series was really, really good. Very intricate plot though, so you have to kind of really pay attention. It's not something you can just sort of pick up and you know, sort of relax into. You got to keep your mind going on this one. The plot is quite intricate. There's lots of people in this one, lots of different families, and like I say, it's very much connected to book 1 as well. So then I couldn't do an Irish Mafia Romance Monday without talking about Carnal Urges by J.T. Geissinger. So this is book 2 again in the Queens and Monsters series, and then this one we are following Declan and Sloane. So this is like I say, book 2 in this series. 2 of them are kind of Russian mafia and 2 of them are Irish mafia, and in this one we are following Declan, like I said, and he is head of the Irish mafia. Now this doesn't really have any kind of like set place. He's literally head of the Irish mafia everywhere in the world. Like he's the head of the head, the highest Irish person, mafia person that you could be. And so while this does take place in various cities around the world, for parts of it Declan and Sloane kind of have to move around for safety reasons. So again, you can't read this one without reading book 1 first, which is Ruthless Creatures. And the reason you can't do that is because in Ruthless Creatures we meet both Declan and Sloane. Now Sloane is the best friend of the heroine from book 1, Natalie, and essentially they get themselves into a bit of a situation. There is a scene in book 1 where there is a bit of a shootout at a restaurant that's seemingly caused by Sloane, and it involves the Russians and the Irish, and it puts these 2 groups kind of at loggerheads with each other. So Declan at the start of this book is not actually head of the Irish Mafia, but he has been sent, but he's sort of like the underboss, if you like. He's the next one in charge, and he is sent to sort this shit out, and he decides he's going to kidnap Sloane to find out who she is, what her connections are, why this has gone down. A bit of revenge, because they very much see it as her fault that some Irishmen have been killed, and he basically takes her hostage. So this is basically what happens at the start of book 1. Not so far into the book, Declan's boss gets killed and Declan ends up becoming head of the Irish Mafia, and then he's basically stuck with this girl that his boss told him to capture and kidnap. He doesn't know quite what to do with her. In fact, no one knows what to do with Sloane. She is a complete wild card. She's a badass heroine. The banter in this one is off the charts. There's nothing that can faze her. She is not at all scared of Declan. She doesn't back down and literally does not know what to do with her. And on top of that, she absolutely captivates and puts a magic spell over all of his men, and so they all really, really like her and can't bring themselves to be horrible to her or do anything horrible to her. Yeah, drives Declan absolutely mad. She drives him absolutely crazy. But of course, this is a romance, so we can assume what's going to go down. But what I will say, there's loads of twists and turns in this one, lots of interesting plot stories, and it really sets up the next 2 books in this series as well, so I would highly recommend. So all of those recommendations so far have been mainly based in America, but now we are going to have a glimpse of Dublin in the new release from Cora Reilly, which was Dangerous Innocence, and this is book 1 in her new 5-leaf clover series. So the start of this book is absolutely set in Dublin, and eventually we kind of move to New York, but it's kind of like bridges New York and Dublin, and I believe the rest of the series is going to take place in Ireland, so I'm really looking forward to that. But in this particular one, we're following Aislinn and Lorcan, and basically Aislinn has been brought up in Dublin. She is a traditional Irish girl, works at the local pub, living with her mum and her sister and her nephew. Now, her sister dreams of being a model, and she decides that she is going to leave home, travel to New York to fulfill her dream as a model. Now, they tried to stop her from going, but she won't take no for an answer basically, and she packs up her bags and goes, including leaving her son behind. And so Aislinn and her mother very much take her son under their wing, very much look after him and take care of him. But after a couple of months, Aislinn's sister stops making contact with the family. She completely goes into radio silence essentially, and Aislinn starts to worry that something has happened to her sister, because although she is focused on becoming a model, she wouldn't cut off all ties completely. And so Aislinn basically decides that she's going to go off to New York to find out what's happened to her sister. Now, her mum tries to stop her from going because her mum's got secrets of her own, and very quickly it becomes apparent that her mother's been lying to her. She has got ties with the Irish Mafia, and in fact Aislinn and her sister were actually born in America and have American passports. So when she goes off to New York, her mum gives her American passport, tells her to go and speak to her uncle who's residing in New York as a bit of a priest at this church, but basically says, you know, be careful who you talk to, don't get involved with the wrong sorts of people. I'm really, really warning you, you don't want to be doing any of that. Aislinn, of course, goes off to New York, of course, gets herself into trouble, of course, bumps into the wrong type of people, and absolutely gets herself on Lorcan's radar. And Lorcan is the head of the Irish Mafia in New York, and based on their family history and sort of what's happened and what's been going on with their sister, Lorcan decides it's a fantastic idea to force Aislinn into an arranged marriage with him, and that's what happens, and the story goes from there. And then, of course, you would be very, very shocked if I didn't mention Maggie Cole's Mafia Wars series, and in particular I'm going to talk today about Unchosen Ruler, which is book 6 in the Mafia Wars series, but book 1 in the O'Malley clan family series. So this is book 6, but the first book of the Irish family story, and in this one we're following Liam and Hayley. This is also set in Chicago with some very strong ties to Ireland. In the start of this book, Liam has recently come out of prison, where he's been for about 15 years, and he has come back into the middle of the Mafia Wars situation that's been going on in the other books. And also his dad, who is the head of the Irish Mafia in Chicago, is very, very ill. He is dying of lung cancer, and Liam will likely need to take over very soon. But of course Liam is struggling to acclimatise to life outside of prison, bringing himself up to speed with exactly what's going on, and there is also quite a lot of negativity, I'll say, towards him, particularly from the Ivanovs, because they remember him as a young impulsive man who got himself into a lot of trouble, got himself into prison, and they are sceptical that this man has changed. But of course, 15 years in prison, he's 15 years older, and he has learned a lot. He's had a lot of time to think and reflect, and he is not the same person that he was when he went into prison. And so part of this book is about him trying to prove himself to his own family and to the Ivanovs as well, that he is different now, and he is absolutely prepared to take over from his father and is not going to make any stupid mistakes. And then alongside this we have the heroine Hayley, and she is part of the friendship group from all the other women from the first 5 books that we've seen. She's our innocent teacher. She is sweet and innocent and not at all fit for this world. But Liam takes one look at her and he falls in love with her and pursues her. Now she's nervous to be with him because she kind of suspects who he is. And then when she finds out he's been in prison for murder, then she is even more reluctant. But he manages to persuade her that he's changed, he's different, he's a good man, he would never hurt her, and they start this relationship together. Now, again, I won't say too much more about this. There is quite a big plot that weaves through all of these stories, but this is the story of Liam becoming like proving that he's a new man, taking over from his father when his father passes away, and also obviously claiming the woman that he's decided he's in love with. So would highly recommend, really enjoyed this one. Maggie Cole has done 2 spin-off series from this. So after the Mafia Wars, she did Mafia Wars New York, and now she's doing Mafia Wars Ireland. So she's written 3 books already, and today I'm going to talk about Illicit Heir, which is book 3 in this series and the latest one that's currently out. Now these books are basically very much set in the UK. The first book was sort of UK, then they went to Ireland. Specifically this family is from Belfast, so they're kind of based in Belfast, so Northern Ireland. And then their rival mafia family is very much in Dublin. So we start off in the UK, first in England, then we move to Northern Ireland, and then ultimately we're sort of like in the rest of Ireland as well, and in Dublin. So basically in this one, Devin is one of the O'Connor brothers. He is Bridget's brother, so Bridget from the Mafia War series, he's actually her brother, and the brothers have all been sent by the dad to basically rebuild their mafia interests in Ireland, and Devin is one of the brothers. Now 2 of his brothers have already ended up with O'Leary women, and the O'Learys are the rival family basically, so they're completely rivals with each other, and 2 of his brothers have already got themselves an O'Leary woman, and he's sort of like a bit puzzled by this. What is so great about the O'Learys that their brothers would betray their families and go off with these women, and he kind of wants to find out for himself. So he convinces another brother of theirs and plus 2 of their kind of close friends who are also in the mafia with them to travel with him one night to Dublin to frequent a club and to try and convince a couple of the O'Leary women to spend the night with them. And they end up going to the pub that is owned by the heroine, who is Lauren, and they happen to turn up just after a big fight's gone down, and the pub has been cleared out, and so all that's left is her and some barmaids that work there. And so they basically convince them to let them into the pub, have a few drinks. They tell them that they're there on a stag weekend, and they sit around playing cards, having a drink, and Devin is very, very interested in Lauren, and he makes her a deal and says, if you lose your hand, your card game, then I get to spend an hour with you upstairs in the flat, and she accepts, because her end of the bargain is that if he loses, he's going to pay her 10,000 euros, and she desperately needs the money because the bar has just been totally smashed up because of this fight, and she needs the money to repair the pub. So they have the card game, he wins, he gets her for an hour upstairs. And this hour turns into a night, so basically they have this one night stand. At first she doesn't realise that he's an O'Connor. If she did, she would never let him into the pub, but then before he leaves in the morning, she happens to see his wallet and the fact that his name is O'Connor, and she goes a little bit crazy, very, very angry, realises that he's almost like tricked her deliberately into being with her, and she pretty much shouts at him and kicks him out. And so as far as they're concerned, that's the end of it, and they go their separate ways. What actually happens is that night she gets pregnant, and when she finds out she's pregnant with an O'Connor baby, then the shit is really going to hit the fan, especially because the head of the O'Learys is a horrible person, but he's absolutely got his sights set on Lauren, and her mum is trying to convince her to marry this guy, because she's like, if you marry him, you'll have everything you want, you'll have anything you want, all the wealth, the kind of life that I could never give you, and also he'll protect you because he's head of the mafia. But he's not a nice guy. He beats up his women. He likes to be a bit rough in the bedroom, and so Lauren absolutely does not want to marry this guy at all. And now she's stuck between a rock and a hard place, because she's pregnant with an O'Connor baby, and O'Leary, the head of the O'Leary Mafia, wants to marry her, and she knows that if he finds out it's not her baby, she's pretty much dead. And she also believes that if she tells Devon that she's having his baby, he's going to take the baby off of her. So she decides that she is going to run away, and she basically runs away to a different part of Ireland, where no one can find her, and she's going to bring up this baby by herself. And of course, then what happens is, for the next several months, both the O'Learys and the Connors search for her to figure out where she's gone, and try and get her back before the baby is born. And so then it's now a race against time of who's actually going to find her first. And that's basically how the setup of the story is. So there we have it. That's 9 recommendations for Irish Mafia romances, if you are interested in those. If you've got any recommendations for me, be sure to put those in the comments box down below. And I want to say again, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. But also kind of like part of the O'Leary Mafia. They're part of the women, you know, that have pledged their allegiance to the O'Learys. In this one we're following Devon, who is one of the does it say what family they're in? So basically we start off in the UK, we go to and then the next one that I'm gonna recommend, Maggie War. That's kind of seemingly what happens. You're just rambling now. Ooh, I'm very hot. I've got a long sleeve top on today because I thought this green would be very good for Ireland, but it's very humid here today, and I'm starting to get a bit clammy already. And I think my cat wants to get in. You alright, monkey? Come on then if you want to. Oh, and I was still recording. I was just sorting out my cat. Right, and I'm back in the room. So, literally just sat down to film, and my online Tesco shop arrived. But I knew if I didn't start and waited the hour, he'd probably be late, and then I felt like I was wasting time. So, probably have to start again. Do we have to start again? I think I did a good intro. Right, I think I just absolutely nailed that intro, which is pretty rare because I normally have to do it 10 million times. Like it's a difficult thing.